Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lore You Know. We're on episode 6, The Demigods of the Scarred Lands. I am here with Sarah Stewart. How are you doing today, Sarah?
Episode 6 already. My
I know,
gosh.
right?
Have we been doing it this long? Holy wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I know. Wow. Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Awesome.
Still like, uh, the world is the world.
It's
But I
so
guess that
true.
enables me to do this. Yeah, if the world was normal, I would be like commuting or something and be able to do this. So awesome there, I guess. There, I
Hooray.
guess. Right.
Yeah.
So today we talked about gods, the major gods,
Yeah.
the big eight, the victors, and a handful of others. So this week there's a whole bunch more.
Yeah.
Um, and I happen to know that at least in terms of 5e, going into 5e, there's definitely more of an emphasis on the demigods being more um, involved in the goings on, the day to day of the PCs
Yeah.
or plot or meta plot you want to play with than so much as the gods. I mean, obviously, GMs will run things however GMs will run
Totally.
things, and that's fine. But I know there's a kind of a greater meta plot in so much as we have one in fifth edition, which we don't really, but in so much as we do, that the victors particularly have gone off and been like, we're gonna go be in our divine planes and run the universe because wow, there's a lot to do here. While which kind of leaves things open for the demigods to go stick their fingers in the adventurers' pies, so to
Yeah.
speak. Um, because they don't have the gods now, the greater gods in their way, kind of going, no, that's my job, now. So in a way, in fifth edition lore, the demigods become more uplifted, more important, and more interesting. And there's a lot of them.
It's true.
There's a crap ton of them. So it's like you look at the pantheons of like you look at the back of the player handbook and for fifth edition, and there's a ton of gods, but you're also looking at a ton of gods in multiple realms because it's like here's the Forgotten Realms
Absolutely,
gods,
yeah.
and here's the Hochhalter gods, and here's the kind of general gods that apply to various races and things. Um, Scarlands obviously does not overlap with any of those directly,
Right.
but it does. It has its own list, and it's just as long as any of those. If even a bit beefier if you look at the whole planet.
Yeah.
Um, So while our focus is certainly the continent of Gelspad, which is where the vast majority of all the plots take place, and frankly, there's so much there, there's not much of a reason to leave it.
Yeah, you could play for the
There
rest
are
of your life there.
easily. In fact, you could write a whole series of novels that never leave Gelspad.
Weird. Hmm.
But there is a bunch of other continents, and there's several gods that are not really heard of in Gelspad, but are still on the planet
Yeah.
and have majority of their followers are on other continents. So we will get into those later. So, anywho, starting with Namorga, who I was saying he's one of the problem gods. I'd say he's he's a confusing puppy. Um, he's a god of death, and I didn't rank him in major gods because he doesn't fulfill my definition of he's not one of the eight victors, so he doesn't fill the official definition of major god, and he doesn't fulfill my definition of born of two titans on Mount Namul, of two or more titans, I should say, on Mount Namul. But he's is he as powerful as a major god? Not in so much as power. He doesn't have his own divine plane. But he's not. His origin story is a precursor to all the other gods.
Yeah.
He is older than Vangel. So they say Vangel's the first god. Well, technically it's Namorga. But Namorga also wasn't worshipped as a god, as far as we know, until after the other gods were born and started to get worshipped as gods.
Right.
And then people were like, oh, we can worship this guy too, And he's like, oh, I can get power from prayer? Cool, all right. So he becomes a god in that way because he can get power from prayer, he can have clerics, he can grant clerical stuff. So he's a god in all that sense. But the legends, and again, this is fuzzy lore, and
Right.
it contradicts itself in various books. Gotta love Namorga. Is he was created either when the first mortals were created, or possibly when the first spirits were created, or possibly when the first mortals died in a really violent way.
Right.
It's not clear.
And
So, but either way,
there's a couple of passages, I can't remember what book it is,
yeah,
that say he might even predate the Titans. So
the
it's
Titans.
like
Yeah,
he is an enigma.
he's a big enigma. I have my own theories, and I'll get to that in a bit. So I'm starting with the more because it's like nicely complicated. But so he was been around forever, as far as they know. Certainly around before any kind of recorded anything, and because Scarlands has these reincarnated guys called the incarnates that can remember back with their reincarnated souls that can remember their past lives. There are entities out there that remember pre-gods that remember all the way back to the creation of souls, and they are like Namorga was there. So we know he was there that long, but he certainly wasn't there in the way that they know of him now. And something happened to him because there's more than one Namorga to add to that. So Namorga has 4 aspects, and this is the first real concept of aspects. These aren't avatars. I'd say each aspect has its own avatar. These are unique personalities, unique alignments, unique purpose, unique areas. And the thing they have in common is they're all death gods. And they're all called the Ni Morga, 3 words. Ni, well, the is a word. N-E, and then space, Morga, as opposed to Nemorga, who's just god number 1 of the 4.
Right.
And Nemorga is in the picture is like big cloaked guy. He looks kind of humanish. Underneath, he's not a skeleton or anything, but he's still kind of this emaciated humanoid with, a big sword and kind of classic death, except not the skull, classic death, but with a sword instead of a
Sickle.
Scythe.
Scythe, yeah.
Sickle, yeah. And his intent, why he was, not so why he was created, but why he came to be, what his purpose is to ferry spirits to the afterlife. And for multiple millenniums, through most of the epochs of Scarn, he would take a spirit, bring it to this afterlife magical door called the Door of Wood. Who knows what it was called back then? And shepherd the spirit through the Door of Wood, and the spirit would get reincarnated as something else. And that was how spirits worked on Scarn for millennia.
Yeah.
Forever. Everybody reincarnated, 100%. Unless, something weird happened and the soul got, annihilated. But for the most part, this is what happened. So then the gods showed up, and they found their divine realms and started having heavens and hells and various afterlives, limbos and whatever. And they promised their worshippers everlasting life in those divine realms. So now Namorga is like, what? I have to take them where? But no, the door. I took them through the door. They have to come back, and they're like, no, we've made this agreement with them, and they can come to our divine realms. And he's like, hey. So now a bunch of spirits, when they die, instead of going through the door, they go to Adriel's happy heaven, or Keely's lovely limbo, or
Which are, canon names.
no, they're not. As much as Scarlands loves alliteration, and boy do they,
Right?
it's not what they're called. Yeah, I don't remember them off the top of my head. I should, I should. I have a book, but no, they're not in a nice little list. You have to look up each one individually. But yeah, so there's 8 or 9, depending on who you ask. Divine planes, mithril heaven for Corian, etc., golden paradise for Madriel. And Keely's is a version of Limbo, though. And Chardoon has a hell, and Vangal has an abyss, although these aren't the same 9 hells and abyss of and 99 levels of the abyss as D&D canon. Scarlands has its own version. So anyway, that's another conversation. So Namorga is there, and the gods started like, oh, we're gonna bring the souls here. And so he kind of consented to that and agreed to that. Now, there may have been an argument, I have no idea, but he doesn't, he's really like, my purpose is to ferry the souls. And that's pretty much his thing. But eventually worshippers start following him, and a lot of them make sense that they follow him because they're like, we're interested in these concepts of afterlife, and a lot of his worshippers are there to really help that along because you have a lot of spirits, particularly post-war, where you've got ghosts and spirits running around because of giant battles, and clerics of Namorga are there going, okay, ghosts, stop being ghosts,
Right.
go where you need to go now. Time to be exercised and go to your heaven or hell or whatever. So you've got clerics of Namorga, and that was kind of their deal. But then you've got clerics of Namorga who are more about necromancy.
Right.
And here's the problem with Namorga. If Namorga is all about bringing back the dead or sending the dead on, why would
Right.
he allow for necromancy? Because necromancy is like, no, we're going to keep the dead here, let them go on to their next life or their heaven, and they have to be, a lich or a vampire or some other kind of monstrosity. And they're generally evil. And Morga is lawful neutral. He's
Yeah.
or true neutral. He's like not. He's very very much the balance guy.
Right.
So what's the deal with that? So that's like a conflict because you've got these followers who claim they worship Namorga, but who do things that Namorga wouldn't like.
And yet get power.
And you get power, and
Right.
all that. So, what's the thing? So as I was saying before, Namorga has 4 aspects. The one most people know of, which is this dude in the cloak. And there's 3 more, and there's 2 that are known in Gelspat, which is Namorga and Otassal, or Otassal, or however you want to say it. I go back to I don't know how to pronounce everything. Otossal. Oh, it's on the screen. Okay. He kind of looks more like classic Death.
Yeah.
Because he's like, looks like a lich. He's got that, or skeleton. He's got that bone structure face. He's very nasty looking. Still got the big heavy cloak, but now we're going with more of a death god motif.
Right.
And he's lawful evil. He's not a nice fella. And he seems to be groovy with the yes, let's make liches kind of guy. So my thought is you can either you follow Namorga in all of his aspects, in which case, even though Namorga would, like the primary Namorga would be, no, don't do this with spirits, Otasa would be like, yeah, I'll make exceptions for this because you deserve it. You've been a good follower, and I'll let you make a lich, So maybe, or something along those lines. And he's not a nice entity. Like I said, he's an evil god, the evil death god of Scarn. And there's followers of him in not only possibly at Hollowfaust, or Namorga's worshipped in Hollowfaust, but also in some folks in Glivid, which is like where the evil necromancers are, which isn't far from Hollowfaust.
Which is such a weird thing. Oh, Hollowfaust, it's a city of not evil necromancers.
Not evil necromancers. Yes. I'm going to emphasize this. Scarred Lands has a city of good or neutral necromancers.
Yeah.
Like there is, and I'm not kidding, and I say this, in Hollowfaust, there is a lawful good lich. Not making this up.
Yeah.
I love it. I have used him. He's one of my favorite NPCs. Just the idea this is a lawful good lich who's like, it just happened to me. I didn't want to become a lich, but I am one now, and I'm going to do my best. And he's just like, yeah, and he's like one of the leaders of Hollowfaust. And Hollowfaust is just super interesting. Like, if you want to play a necromancer, you can play a necromancer who's not evil, which I love that because it's fun to play a necromancer. It's like I want an army of weird things following me around, and and be a cool, like a summoner wizard who doesn't have puppies and birds, but who has skeleton warriors. Because it's cool without being and so I love that. I love that aspect of that. I can play a neutral good lich with a skeleton army. No, I don't know how it works, but you can do it. If you can figure out how to make it work, you're allowed to do it. So Asasals would be the god of the not so nice necromancers. And Hollowfaust, which was the city founded by these 7 pilgrims, including some followers of Namorga, the other version of Namorga, that they're like, we're going to do necromancy here and be cool about it, where people don't like us because they're afraid. And they build their own city. on the ruins of effectively Pompeii. It's like this volcano. But then they have a splinter group, and there's a group that's like, no, we're evil necromancers, and they kind of wander off into the edge of the Hornsaw Forest nearby and create their own city of evil necromancers called Hochhalter, and they're kind of a bunch of dicks. And they follow mostly Chardun and Belsmith, but there's plenty of them also that follow Tussle. So those are kind of where you would find a Morga or god of death worshippers in Scarn would be in that kind of region, sort in Gelspad, I should say, in central Gelspad, in those two nearby communities. If you can call the city of necromancers a community. Holofaust is definitely a community. Not so much Hotel, but Holofaust is definitely a community.
Yep, and
then
excuse me, bake sales and block parties and all that.
God, yeah. Well, and I'm going off in the weeds here, but Holofaust is right on the edge of a bunch of really nasty areas in Scarred Lands, like, and the two communities are constantly battling each other, as they really hate each other. And Holofaust made one of my favorite Scarred Lands monsters. They're only CR2, but they creep the crap out of me, called the Siege Undead. And Nomorga would be behind this, because no spirits, but they take a corpse and they make not one, not two, but 3 undead out of a single body. And they're the creepiest freaking they like make a skeleton man, which is a skeleton with some extra bits. They make a skin man, which they basically take the skin and fill it with like sand and magic, and he walks around like a stuffed doll. And they make a meat man, which is just gross.
Right.
And I love the pictures, and they haven't showed up in the new creature collection.
So efficient. So efficient.
It's very efficient. You're gonna do a siege. You triple the size of your army.
Right.
Get all the bodies, 3 undead out of each one. And they're very alarmingly scary. And at least the skeleton guys are more powerful than your standard skeletons. So because the necromancers of Holofaust are badass. So anyway, Nomorga. Then there's 2 more aspects. I kept hinting at that. These 2 guys are not not known at all really in Gelspad, though. I'll say they're not known at all, but they're certainly not worshipped or followed or talked about very much, except maybe in deep Nomorga follower lore.
Right. Sages sit around and talk about them, but no one's worshipping them.
Yeah, no one's actively worshipping either of these 2. They're both followed in the continent of Asherak. Which there's 5 continents on Scarn. Asherak is when I talked about Mount Namul and where the gods were born. That was on that continent. And they're only found. They're not found in most of the books. They're only found in Strangelands, which is the weird last final book that came out that describes the last 3 continents of Dragonlands and Fenric and Asherak. And we're talking about. And of course, I don't have the book in front of me, so I have to reference my doc. Gamgol, who I find absolutely fascinating, just because of the art. Gamgol is the god of funereal aspect. And to me is the hint that Asherak has kind of got an Egyptian influence, because Gamgol is clearly a mummy.
Right.
You look at it, it's like, that's a mummy.
And straight up Egyptian mummy.
What gets me about the art is the mummy is clearly a hot chick. I mean, there's clearly some side boob going on there, and some kind of, you can see mummy belly button here under the. I'm like, those are tight wrappings. That's not a rib cage. It looks like a belly button. That's not abs. Maybe it's abs. I don't know. But the description says Gamgol's he, so I'm like, I'm going with non-binary god. I don't know. That presentation. I don't know what's going on with Gamgol. It's like either that or the art guy who wrote the book, the art guy, and the description guy did not talk, and they went out in publication, and
these things do happen.
These things do happen. Which is almost certainly what happened here. But Gamgol is described as funereal aspect, embalming, and the protector of physical remains of the dead, which is apparently a really big deal in Asherak. So in Asherak, given that Asherak is about 90% desert, there's the the Egyptian motif kind of mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there not much else is said about them beyond he kind of uses a mace and I will actually go into battle if necessary, or they, and is sort of badass and cool, but there's not really a lot of description for Gamgul. Other than that, and then we've got one other aspect of Numorga, which is Kadeshu. And Gamgul's lawful neutral. The only one of the four is lawful neutral. Kadeshu's neutral like Numorga, like the main primary Numorga. But he's the hot one, so to speak. At least he's the only one that looks like a person.
Yeah.
Numorga is like creepy not skeleton, but emaciated guy under robes, Tassel's skeleton, Gamgul's mummy. Kadeshu's dude with a beard.
It's true.
He looks kind of normal. So to me, he feels like the most approachable.
He's got his little scepter.
Shut up, I'd actually. Yeah, he's kind of boring looking. What we really got is the art. And his description, pretty lightweight. I almost read the description and go, Death God, really? Because he's the god of travel, transitions, gateways, and new beginnings, which does map the whole door of wood reincarnation aspect.
Right.
But he's followed by priests who build things, so like monuments and constructions and cities and stuff. So it's like city building god of death. I don't know.
I feel like they were going for like a cyclical death concept, and so you have death, and then you have the passage after death, and then he's kind of like the what happens after death god, but it translates weird.
I don't know. It translates very weird. It's like, okay, fine, city building god of death. And he's male human, resembles a human of noble bearing, clad in richly ornamented tunic, and he has got the set. They all have kind of, a weapon, and he's got this spiky scepter, which is a little bit alarming. But there you go. But it's supposed to look like a sun, so a bit of a Madriel feel into that. And he's not really known to use it ever. He apparently doesn't need to use it. So again, kind of a demigod that's only really followed in Asherak, and not much is known about him, like beyond this little paragraph. But he's the fourth aspect of Numorga. So how did Numorga get four aspects? Why isn't there just one death god, or maybe a good death god, or a neutral death god, a bad death god? That would map. Where did these other two dudes come from?
Right.
And there's not clarity. We were told Numorga showed up when souls first showed up, probably around the time that Gulthane went, let's give them souls. And, or maybe even before that, because the Titans themselves were spirits, but spirits that didn't really die, so there wasn't a need for it. So when souls started dying, Numorga shows up. But was Numorga four demigods that sort of made an alliance and smooshed together into one, or was Numorga one god who got splintered somehow and became four? We don't know.
Yeah.
I have my own headcanon theory, but it's totally mine because it goes with my whole Scarlands mythology, that I'm betting that Evil Moon had something to do with it.
Oh, the evil moon.
the nameless orb, maybe, I could imagine Numorga going up there going, what was this all about? After the Titans go and nom on it and become the Titans. Maybe Numorga took a trip up there, and maybe that's where Tassel came from, was the moon's influence on Numorga splintered off this this evil personality, this lich personality, and then maybe he needed to balance that and made, sexy Kadeshu and chill Gamgul. I don't know. But, maybe something like that happened.
I'm just seeing a scene kind of like the Superman, where, Superman splits into evil.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. One of those things, like transporter accident.
Right.
You've got,
But it's weird because Kadeshu has the the evil
Yeah.
universe beard, so I don't know if that's gonna work.
Okay, that's a me. I think I like goatees. I think goatees are
Me too.
attractive. So I don't automatically associate goatee with Mirror Mirror Spock.
Right.
I think goatees are like, if you're gonna have a beard, I only like three beards, like none. That short scruffy thing or goatee. Anything else is just unnecessary. But I am totally 100% biased on that. So
I have to say that I
I
like the
like the
goatee because it's the only thing I can grow. I can't grow the rest of it, so.
yeah. Like, the Doctor Who, the Master. There've just been so many wonderful, Ned, Tony Stark. So many characters with goatees who were just cool and interesting.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great look. So I don't mind that. I didn't even kind of realize that it's a goatee. Of course, you think it's cool, Sarah. He's got a flipping goatee. So let's get extra for it. So anyway, my in my lore, that's pretty much what happens in my lore is Nomorga goes to the moon and Toss will split off because of evil transporter accident,
Yeah.
and then the other two are made in that kind of way. Uh, uh, yeah, and I just realized, and I never made this connection before, that I probably got this idea from an old Robert Sheckley story.
It is funny how the
It
things
just hit
you
me.
you learn throughout
It
your
just hit
life,
me.
you end up
Yeah,
using
yeah,
them
yeah,
whether
yeah.
you realize it or not.
That's probably where that influenced me was from that. And we're going way off topic, so let's try. So enough about death gods. So that's our death gods. Let's move on to sliding through the same motif into goddess of shadows. My personal favorite god of Scarn is Drendari, who I think is just the cat's meow. She showed up first in the original creature collection as a creature, and she was like CR16, and I was like, how can a divine avatar be such a low challenge
Right.
rating? She should be at least 26, right? And then you read her stats and you read what she can do, and I was like, that is not a CR16 in any list. So who balances? But Drendari, her story is beautifully complicated, and I think she's super interesting. Um, so goddess of shadows, and I'm convinced that Dren, the word Dren, which is the first half of her name, that's in common with also the dark elves, or not
Oh
dark
yeah.
elves, but they're not dark, but the underground elves, the Drendali, so DRNDRALI as opposed to DRNDDARI. They
Right.
sound very similar. It's easy to get them mixed up until you've
Mm-hmm.
really gotten deep into this lore. People will get the Drendali and Drendari totally mixed up. They'll think that Drendari is the goddess of the Drendali. This is not true. My again headcanon is that Drend means dark in some
Yeah.
brute language, and that explains that, because elves of the Underdark, or not Underdark, but elves of Underground of Darkness, and goddess of shadows and darkness, so maybe Drend means dark. Making that up.
That makes sense.
But that's the way I keep them straight. so there's Drendari. Drendari is the daughter of Inkili, the god/goddess of chaos. And the original lore is Inkili got it on with a siren, and then the siren shows up and says, "Your baby, bye," and drops the baby in Inkili's lap and wanders off. And Inkili's like, "I have a daughter, okay." What am I doing with this? And she grew up with Inkili. And she's chaotic neutral as well, as just like Inkili is. Well, the true lore, which gets revealed in the Forsaken books as well as some of the later publications, is that because I think in the first Gelspad books, it's like, oh, and a siren, but in the Divine and Defeated and the later books, it was Belsameth playing
Oh.
on the biggest trick, the biggest prank ever done, because Belsameth had to prove that she could prank the prankster. So Inkili, god of trickery, goddess of trickery. Belsameth, also goddess of trickery, pretends to be a siren, seduces Inkili, and they have a kid. And I'm just like, I think Belsameth did it just to prove that she could do it.
Right.
But then went, oops, I got pregnant. I don't know. but Drendari is also her presumably her youngest child too. And she's got 4 kids, and all of her kids are two of her kids are very well known and used a lot. The other two not as much, but yeah, and Drendari's, I think, super interesting because of what happens to her. And I think I hinted about this before when I talked about the Slaracians, because Belsmith's other kids are, and I'm not going to talk about the dead ones so much, but Hidaris was one of her oldest kids, god of murder. He got captured by the Uthriac and tortured and killed. Drendari then later got captured by the Uthriac as well, and got tortured but not killed, but they sucked away her power.
Yeah, they learned all sorts of shadowy
dark
magic.
That's why you have the Penumbra Lords and the Cult of the Ancients, because they all got the kind of the weird, Hidaris and Drendari powers. So Drendari, gets rescued and goes back, but she's very nerfed demigod because so much of her power was sucked away by the Uthriac. And she's got this, in deep lore, she's got this sort of hidden agent of an Uthriac in her head, of like a splinter personality of Deturne, which is the crazy Uthriac. So he's like somewhere buried in her subconscious. And should she ever get her hand on the Rod of Souls, he would, or whatever, would manifest and take over Drendari's personality. And the last thing you want to have is a demigoddess of darkness taken over by an insane scion god,
right?
Which is what would happen. So there's that. So there's that whole plot, and that's kind of, I think, a super interesting plot. She's also has her own domain. Well, she doesn't have a divine realm like the greater gods does. She is the goddess of shadows, and there's a shadow plane on Scarn, not equivalent to 5E's major setting Shadowfell, but it's because they're not really related, but it's one of the, what they call the transitive or occult planes, and she's dominion over that. So if you want to shadow walk, or if you want to transition through the plane of shadows, she's got control over that, and shadow monsters and creatures kind of follow her worshiper. And one of the four transitive planes, or occult planes, as they call them. And the other, getting into that, one of her siblings is Arios, who's, to me, the other really, really interesting god, demigod. He's the god of dreams, and her half-brother. Again, Belsmith's son. So it wasn't revealed that he was her half-brother for quite a while. Belsmith's son, and Arios' father is actually Mazos, one of the Titans. Belsmith's dad, too, so a little squicky there. Belsmith got it on with her dad to make a kid intentionally.
It's all very Greek.
Oh, yeah, it's very, well, yeah, incest among the gods of Scarn is not a thing. If they don't care, it's no problem. Just like the Greek gods, it's fine. But Arios, he's my other favorite. But he's more eclectic. And if he looks familiar, he should, because if you look at the dates of the publication, someone was clearly a big Vertigo fan. Right. Because Arios, Morpheus, really Daniel, Morpheus is part 2, very, very, very similar in look. And when you read the description of Arios, it's dead on Dream from Sandman. It's like, there is no, I think his familiar is his familiar is not familiar, is Harold is an owl, which is very akin to Matthew the Raven. It's all, there was influence there. It's not a direct one-to-one ripoff, but right. There's definitely influence.
Heavily inspired by.
But there's that. But Arios is really super complicated, and also tied in with the whole Uthriac Slaracians thing, because, and this is really complicated, and I did talk about this before. If he's a piece of Cyclus, the Uthriac of Dreams was snagged, and Mazos went, I'm going to make a demigod of this, and Belsmith, sorry, not Mormont. Belsmith, you're going to help me. And apparently that's why he was made. And whether Belsmith knew that's what Mazos was doing when they made Arios, it's not clear, but I don't know. All we know is Arios is certainly older than Drendari, possibly younger than Hidaris, the god of murder, but younger than, after the whole Cyclus gets split up, but before Cyclus wakes up. So Arios was around before the Jack of Tears came into power, but But there's a giant connection there, and should all those pieces actually get together, Arios could potentially become a horrible Luthriac and get taken over by a scion and
Right.
become a real dream god and god of nightmares. So
Also not a great thing.
also a really interesting plot. If you want to play
Right.
that one. And I've played with both in my setting. So
Nice.
and having to deal with, both Arios, nightmare god, and Drundari, crazy dream darkness god wandering around, I think is the thing. And we actually have a monster in the new creature collection that also hints at this, and it's called a Dream Shadow. So check that out if you have a creature collection, because there's all that, and it's all kind of tied in. So I love Arios, and I was, it helped that I was a Sandman fan in the 90s before this stuff came out. So love Arios. All right, that's those two. Who's next? Let's go with the last sibling, Sethris. Sethris. She's Belsmith's fourth kid. So I mentioned Hadaris, god of murder, died. Arios, Drundari, Sethris. Sethris is the other one who feels, to me, derivative. She's the goddess of vengeance. Very tight in there. Like, beat you up vengeance. And very over-the-top vengeance. Like, not eye for an eye kind of stuff, but an eye for all your eyes and all your kids' eyes and all your grandkids' eyes. Like, over-the-top vengeance. And so my take on this is Belsmith does not have good relations with her children. It's maybe not the best mother. But Sethris, I would say, of her living children, is certainly the one that's most like Belsmith. Adaris may have been even closer, but Arios is chaotic good, or possibly chaotic neutral, depending on which lore you look at. Drundari is chaotic neutral. Sethris is definitely neutral evil, or possibly chaotic evil. She's neutral evil, and not in a nice way. And I find Sethris fascinating, and the reason why I say she's derivative is she's also big into spiders, She has spider creatures to follow her. She's got kind of a web design to her outfit. She uses poison all the time. And originally, she tried to become the demigod of the elves, specifically of the Forsaken elves. After the god of the elves gets killed, she goes to them and goes, "You want to worship me, right?" And they're like, "No. We'd rather not worship anyone." And she's like, "Oh." And eventually she gets these weird goblins worshiping her instead. Called the spider eye goblins, and they're to even call them goblins is a reach. And they're in relation to goblins as they're small, and that's about. And I have
and I think they have green skin.
They have green skin, yeah. 20 years, and that's about where it ends. But they have multiple eyes and they have multiple limbs, a la a spider. And they were created by, and this is new canon. This was not mentioned in the no books, but in new canon they were either created by or were followers of Baragos, the Lesser Titan. I'm on beef on Lesser Titans because he didn't go to the orb and become a but anyway. Where did he come from? Anyway, Lesser Titan. Probably a Ushada that got too big for its britches. That some other Titan went, "I'm gonna uplift you." But the Spider Eye Goblins followed him, and when he died, see Trilogy Sparagos for more details. They went and transferred their allegiance to Sethris. Sethris being a worshipped god is a fairly new thing. It's only kind of either post-war or in and around during the war. So she hasn't been worshipped very long. Apparently, she spent most of her time before that in Belsmith's divine domain. But she's also the goddess of the, I want to get it right, the ethereal plane. And she has this place, and I'm not kidding when I say this, she has this place called the Web. It's in the ethereal plane, and she's got dominion over it. And the ethereal plane is one of the 4 occult planes. So we've got Drundari, goddess of shadows, that's an occult plane. We've got Arios, goddess of dreams, that's an occult plane. We've got Sethris, goddess of vengeance, over the ethereal plane. 3 kids of Belsmith But then you've got Nemorga, who we talked about at the beginning, goddess of death. He oversees the astral plane, which is where spirits go when they go to the Door of Wood. They have to go through the astral plane, so he's kind of in charge of that plane. I question. 3 of Belsmith's 4 kids were in charge of 3 of the 4 occult planes. Was Hidaris supposed to have control of the astral plane? Question.
Dun, 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 dun.
Did Nemorga have anything to do with Hidaris' demise? Conspiracy theory. Okay.
I mean, just to feed the fire, so Nemorga is a neutral god, and standing back and looking at the fact that Belsmith has now placed her children across all of these planes of power, he very well could have been like, this isn't a good idea. Let's figure out how to fix this and not start a war.
Evil god,
right?
In charge of the astral plane. But was this Thracians and Uthrak who killed Hidaris? Nemorga didn't kill him, but I don't know. It just feels off to me. Like 3 of Belsmith's children, 4 kids, 3 of them are in charge of occult planes.
Right.
This is, I don't know, conspiracy theory. I don't know. But anyway, back to Sethris. So Sethris, she's in the astral plane. She has this place called the Web. She wanted to be worshipped by elves who were kind of the Forsaken elves, who were kind of known to be evil, but after post-elf god death, they kind of went evil. Sound like Loth to you? Because it sounds like Loth to me.
Both light.
So I think of Sethris as Loth light, basically.
Yeah.
She's neutral evil, not. I don't even know what alignment Loth. I guess Loth is chaotic evil. I've seen other lore that Loth was lawful evil, but I think it might have just been in a video game. But definitely evil like Loth. That's the spider thing going on. So you can definitely see those connections. But other than that, really not Loth. But I admit, when my players went to Loth's web, I just used not Loth's web. Went to Sethris's web. I just used the Loth's web module because why not? It was convenient.
If it fits,
It fits. It really does, and it fits her whole MO. And she's, like I said, she does not necessarily get along with Belsmith either. So I'm just like in Belsmith bad parent because, as far as I can tell, all 3 of her living kids really hate her. So, yeah, it's just got stuff. And my lore is that Belsmith has issues with that, and she wants to be a good mom, and by her definition of good mom, and maybe wants her son back, who was the one who did get along with her the most.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like the idea of Hidaris, and so a lot of my motivations around Belsmith is trying to bring back Hidaris, her dead child, because the other 3 kids have rejected her.
Yeah, so. They're not big fans.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised to hear that Sethris had rejected her too, because she.
I think it's
Sethris is.
I think it's that extreme nature of Sethris. Like, like you said, it's not like an eye for an eye. It's an eye for your body and all of your children and everything. So it's. I think she overreacts. She's definitely that teenager.
Yeah. And even though Drendari is presumably the youngest, Sethris has definitely got that whiny teenager attitude. So, but she's scary. She's I'd say that one of the scariest demigods. I would not want to, I'd rather meet any of the other ones. I'd rather meet Otassel than freaking Sethris.
At least you know what to expect from Otassel. You're just like,
yeah.
All right, he's gonna try and kill me.
Sethris is like, you don't know what she's gonna do.
Yeah.
But neutral evil, not chaotic evil. So there's that at least. I don't know if it's better or worse. But yeah, and she's got, as I said, this weird web city. And she's got a bunch of other weird spider creatures. I would not be surprised if and whenever you think of some kind of a giant spider, what are they called? Ankags?
Oh, the Ankags,
yeah. They're probably in her area, so they would probably worship her, and certainly any kind of spider creature is going to be under her domain and under her purview. And all these evil ones anyway. So that's fun. Okay, so that's Bellsmith Kids and Namorga. Now we're gonna go on to kind of the other category of demigods, and I'm gonna talk about what I would call the other teenager demigod, which is Idra. Although to call her a teenager is unfair, but in terms of young, and in terms of that, and she's another one I love. She's the god of sex and secrets, very very specifically, and I think, and actually I know canon-wise and lore-wise that she's the one who pretty much took over the gap left behind when Gulaben, the Titan of which we do not speak, left that kind of empty void of behind Idra, and it's known in lore that Idra took a lot of Gulaben's worshippers and magic and sort of took it as her own. Idra's complicated and interesting. I mean, I think all the demigods for the most part are complicated and interesting, at least this group of them. And Idra's the last one of this kind of complicated, interesting group. But she was the child of Tanel and Rinruk. And while Mormo got together with her dad consensually,
right,
Tanel did not get together with her dad consensually. Yeah. This was not consensual. This was not a good thing. And but as a result, Tanel had Idra. And Tanel was originally the goddess of sex,
right,
before Rinruk raped her, but she kind of gave that up because that was horrible. But her daughter took over that aspect of her, that sphere of influence of hers, and became the goddess of desire and sex. But consensual sex, Idra will smack you down. Actually, pretty much all of the gods will smack you down. Like, consent is actually a really big deal in Scarn. Yeah. There's maybe some of the more obscure demigods who won't, but certainly pretty much all the major gods, that is not, no.
And even the societies. So you look at cities like Shelzar, which are known for excess and crazy orgies and all that, and they're like, yeah, but if it's not consensual, we're gonna just kill you.
Kill you. Yeah, it's like punishment for rape is like, no, this isn't like, you don't get to go to that college you wanted to go to.
Right.
This is like, this isn't, you go to prison and we'll just kill you. Yeah. It's like a big deal. And I don't know about Vangal, but certainly all of the other gods are like, no. And Bellsmith, if she finds out there was no consent, she will kick your ass.
Right.
She will just, as much as Bellsmith is evil, she finds out anybody's this has happened to, she will just destroy them. So consent is a huge deal in Scarn. Don't know about Vangal's the only one who's, I don't know where he stands on that, but all the other gods are. So Idra's big deal. Consent is huge, even though orgies are huge too. And groovy times, definitely huge. But secrets is her other thing. And I think a lot of it is because keeping this secret, she's sort of taken over, I think, of that, what Gulaben was about, and the secret of people not learning about Gulaben for fear that they try to bring her back, because there's a huge fear that they try to bring her back. She holds that secret, and so the only people you're going to find on Scarn that actually know about Gulaben that aren't like incarnates who remember,
right,
or weird sages who just have crap tons of archaic information, is going to be the followers, the very senior followers of Idra. Mind you, there's lots of followers of Idra. She's very popular. There's no city per se to her. There's no specific location to her, but there's tons of little sects of Idra and little temples of Idra, and sexy times. Idra is all about that. And Idra's also interesting because while she's beautiful, she always, no matter how she appears, she can appear to look however she wants, like all the gods. It's one of their core powers as a god. Is I can look whatever I want. But whenever she appears, she has some kind of subtle flaw that's always kind of a tell that it's Idra. So, if she's trying to be in disguise, and it'll be some kind of a disturbing flaw, like she might be missing a finger, or she'll have a weird scar, or something like that, where it's just a little bit off about her, and she'll be drop dead gorgeous with one little off element. that's just like, that's alarming, you know, and that'll stick out. You'll make note of and go, what is? And then it's good as Idra, and it's that kind of flaw that of her creation that is sort of with her at all the times, of that kind of memory of that, and that's a lot of why consent big deal with Idra. So, and the kind of revenge against what happened to Tanel, her mom. So, but I think she's really cool. She's very, very popular. No surprise in Shelzar, and in various other places. So, and very big on, you know, various fertility festivals and whatnot. So, you want kids, Idra's a good one to get.
Yeah.
To be like, Idra, help bless us with fertility. I love her. I don't use her nearly that as much as I use the others. Okay, moving on. We've got the Demigoddess, who I think probably has more worshippers than anyone on Scarn. Actually, I don't know, but her territory is certainly the biggest, and that would be Manawi, goddess of the sea. She's and I always try to remember that she's a she, because I always kind of forget. That's always a god. And Scarn is more ocean than Earth by far, if you believe the various few world maps we have. And I have an issue with that, because one particular flippin' map, I literally pull out the book, because of this BS map. I'm gonna show you this. It's not gonna come up clear right now. This is a map from the you're not gonna see this. Not from the Bloodsea book. You can put it up on the website. I don't want anybody to use this map because it makes no sense. Because it implies that the Bloodsea, which is not by any means, you know, the only sea out there, that implies the Bloodsea is twice the size of the Atlantic Ocean. And you get past the Bloodsea part of the Bloodsea to get to Asherak. Asherak does not border the Bloodsea, so you get beyond the bloody part of it to regular ocean again before you reach Asherak. And the Bloodsea already is twice the size of the Atlantic Ocean. Actually, 4 times technically. It's twice the length, but also twice the width. You know, so it's really 4 times the size of the Atlantic Ocean, actually. So, and it's supposed to be the smaller. It's supposed to be smaller than the Blossoming Sea. So I'm just like, so Scarn has to be like 6-8 times the size of Earth.
Enormous, right?
This is not map, so I do not like this map. This really, this is one of my like problems with 3.5 Scarn is map, page 16, Bloodsea. Just don't follow that. The guideline on that map is wrong. That's all I can say. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, I can imagine Scarn is bigger than Earth, but not that much bigger than Earth, because it's just time zones and I don't know, everything gets mixed up. But it also means the Scarn percentage of Scarn that must be ocean is massive.
Yeah,
it's so much more. Earth is 75% ocean, something like that. That Scarn would be like 90% ocean if that was the case. So. And how much of the ocean is untapped? We have a lot of lore books on the Bloodsea because it's super interesting or anything, but we don't know hardly anything about the rest of it.
Right.
And there's
like vague references and
vague references, but like not much. And it's usually just on the coastline of Gelspad. But there's vague references to. There's definitely people living in the sea. There's merfolk. There's 5 or 6 different mer races. So. And Manawi is one of the only gods really predominantly worshipped by them. You know, you've got a few we've been adding in 5th edition just to expand on it, like the Tritons worship Corian. But so we've added that. Just be like, and I say we, I don't mean me. I had nothing to do with it, but the Onyx Path we. And nothing to do with them either. So I have no idea why I'm saying we. They. But they came up with the Tritons. So, but Manawi should be like, if they worship gods, the various sea races, that would be her, and so you'd think she would be super powerful. But since we're so land focused and Gelspad focused, it's not a lot said about her. But goddess of the sea, she's goddess, daughter of Mormo, and one of the Jinn. One of the water Jinn, no surprise. So and she is worshipped by sailors and fishermen on land, and then obviously a bunch of sea races, including merfolk and sirens and Lokatha and Kuatoa. So, and
Oh, fish
presumably
people.
sea elves and
Right.
whatever. That's fish people. So, um, and she's got some pretty interesting stuff going on. Um, Major city that follows her would be Roach, Rohoch, Rohoch.
Oh, down on the south.
Yes, it's not part of the hegemony, the Calastian hegemony, even though it's in the Calastian. It's like the city-state that's right on the tip of the peninsula at the bottom of the Calastian hegemony. So it's completely surrounded by Calastian on 3 sides and then ocean on the fourth. Um, but they follow Manawi, and she's kind of their major god there. One of the only real cities in Gelspad where she's like has big temples and whatnot. And I'm reading. So she's chaotic neutral, like weather, like the storms.
Yeah.
And her big thing now is trying to push back the Blood Sea from spreading further. So a lot of her effort, and a lot of the effort of her followers are about that. And one of the reasons I think why the Blood Sea isn't continuing its spread at the rate that it started when it first happened is Manawi's efforts in trying to contain it. So you figure there's a lot of her power and pool is going into that, for pulling her power into her followers and just kind of containing the Blood Sea as much as possible. And many of her followers go and just fight the monsters that come out of the Blood Sea, or foray into the Blood Sea to take care of that. So that's her deal. So I think she's neat. And she's got kind of that whole fish motif, and followers of Tritons, or the fork weapons. Is Triton? Right?
Tridents. Yeah.
Trident. Triton is the fish people. Trident. I didn't take any cold meds today, I promise. Okay, that's enough about her. Okay, we're talking about two uplifted gods, racial gods. So start with the god of the dwarves. I talked about him a little bit, I think, when I talked about the god of the underground elves. Goran is the god of the dwarves, specifically the dwarves of the Gelspad Mountains, and the only god that looks like a dwarf, presents as a dwarf. He didn't make the dwarves. He's way more recent than that. The origin of Goran is that he was a dwarf hero king. So a king who did stuff well pre-war, though. Well pre-war. And the Corian was like, "You done good. Some of your people worship me. I don't have the time for this. Here, I'm gonna turn you into a demigod." And so Corian literally uplifts him and makes him a demigod, like basically a gift per se of just. So it is possible. This implies it is possible that very heroic PCs who actually get past level 20 could become a demigod if a god like shines favor on you. So that kind of opens up that window of introducing this Goran. Hey, anybody could be that. And you know that he's got this kind of funky look where he's got like half a beard.
Yeah.
And some kind of gnarly scars. That happened during the Divine War, as the big fight with Churn. His beard gets ripped off and it never grows back. So he's got like half a, and so like one of the biggest dwarven swears is by Goran's half beard. So if you're playing a dwarf and you need a good like vow, that would be the one.
Yeah.
So remember that boy Goran's half beard. Yeah, he's the big war axe, and all the dwarves who grew up in the Keldars, and particularly the city of Borak Torn, have that. He's an unusual demigod in that he is known to just wander around the streets of Borak Torn, the city of the dwarves, just shows up, says hi, hangs out with plays checkers with the king or something. I don't know what, but he's one of the more approachable demigods. Like you could just run into him.
Yeah.
And like every kind of major things happen to the dwarves, because 90% of his followers are like, not 90%, but a large percent are in this one city, and dwarves make pilgrimage to Borak Torn, and so you want to meet him, just go there, and he'll be like, I bless your children, I bless your marriage, or whatever, or no, and he's just there, and pretty cool. It's about as approachable as the king. But he's got his own little heaven. It's part of Corian's heaven. It's kind of a pocket realm where the dwarves get to go when they die, that Goran takes care of. And it's on the same plane as Corian's heaven. He's lawful good like Corian. And Corian's the one who uplifted him. So most of his followers are in Borak Torn, but he's got followers all over the Keldar Mountains. And yeah, so he's pretty cool. But he's got a hate on for Nathalos, the demigod of the underground Deirdrendal elves, because of what happened during the war. So there is that. So he doesn't like elves, and this kind of goes with the whole cliche of dwarves and elves.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. But more recently in canon, because of what's gone on with not more recently, I shouldn't even say that. Not 5e canon, but the stuff with Vlado and bringing back the elf god.
Gotcha.
They got help from Borak Torn in those novels in the Forsaken trilogy. So as much as they still hate the Deirdrendal elves, they do have some partnerships with, of all things, the Forsaken elves. So it's kind of, and also it was the Forsaken elves who killed Churn eventually, and Churn was the one who, took out the beard and everything. So they really, really hate Churn. And so it kind of makes sense that, like, thank you, Forsaken elves, for destroying the Titan that made our lives miserable. So, screw those underground elves, but we like the elves from that other continent. So they kind of have some kind of partnership for post-Forsaken.
Yeah.
So after the elf.
It is nice seeing this in Scarlands, because it's not a racial thing. It's a cultural thing. So if those, underground elves had been human-shaped chipmunks, and it was still,
it doesn't matter.
And they just happened to use the elf and dwarf hatred thing that's kind of cliche, but it's nice to see that they, in other realms do get along with elves. So it really was a cultural thing instead of the strange, Tolkien-esque, they just don't get along because...
Because the dwarves are all grumpy and elves are all and because it's not, D&D's really shifted that, and honestly, there is this whole thing, I would say, in Scarlands in general, of this underlying core racism, and that's like something like that's actually being kind of touched on in 5e, because now you can play these races that used to be, they're all monsters. All of the rat people were monsters. All of the cat people were monsters. All of the snake people were monsters. All the horse people. And now you can play them, and they're all playable races. And before you could play the orcs, but old 3.5 introduced you could play an orc. But now, or at least a half orc. Now it's like all these other playable monster races, and that's just cool. It's like, I want to play a whatever.
Totally.
But. Yeah, everybody wants to play a cat person because it's cool. Who doesn't want to play a cat person? But now there was already baked in that underlying racism. If you read the old lore, there's so much of it where it's like, we fight the Titan spawn, and the Titan spawn are these things,
right.
And the orcs are Titan spawn, and Slytherin Titan spawn, and now you've introduced the Redeemed, which turns that on its head and be like, well, not all Titan spawn.
Right. Right. Yes.
And Manticore aren't even Titan spawn. They were made by a god.
Yeah. It's so shifting towards a society doesn't like a group of people because of their choices rather than their shape or their color or their their origin. So these Redeemed have come out of the woodwork, and they're like, we don't really want the Titans to come back. We want the gods to be here, and we want to be your friends, and that's great. It's such a great storytelling tool.
And one of my favorite elements is playing with that bias. Playing that bias there of what does this mean, So, and that's definitely a case with the elves and the dwarves and all their shit. because you get 3 really distinct races of elves.
Yeah.
But when you dig into it, it's way more than that. You've got 3 in terms of looks. Ganges elves, they're the traditional wood elf. Forsaken elves, they're the high elves. Drendali, they're the drow, but not really. I always go, but not really. So they don't look like that. They're not. They're just weird underground, not underdark, underground elves. But so you've got those still 3 races, but they're not. It's like, does that mean all the Drendali are evil, like the drow? And you've got your, go find your Dritz Drendali. I'm sure there's. Can I play a Drendali who's like Dritz? Yeah, of course you can play a Drendali like D&D, but the Drendali aren't the drow. So, and it's a cultural thing. It's not a racial thing.
Right.
So their culture is evil, or the Slytherin, specifically the Slytherin diseased rat people have an evil culture. That's the name of their brood, is the diseased. I mean, there's a clue right there. But it doesn't mean that every rat person is evil. It means that group of rat person have an evil culture. So, and then they've really made that clear in 5th edition. So anyway, moving on as I go off into another
tangents, yay!
But I love playing with racism and Scarn. Let's go with the other uplifted god, which would be, I'm not gonna say this wrong. Hwyrd. It's very Welsh. Hwyrdd. I say it's Welsh because it's got a double consonant. Or Hwyrd.
It's Howard.
I don't know. Howard. Yeah. So he's the god of halflings. Halflings needed their own god. Halflings. Oh, here's really digging into racism and Scarn. So he's oh no, he wasn't uplifted. My bad. He's not uplifted. I think Goransian was uplifted. So he's the son of Denev and Enkili. So I was thinking Enkili uplifted him, but no, Enkili didn't uplift him. He's actually Enkili's son. And he's also got the earth thing going with Denev. So Enkili gets together with Denev. Oh no. Okay. And they have a kid. And he goes on to become the god of the halflings. So he's got the halfling
stature.
Smallness.
Yeah.
He's still got the I'm a god, so therefore I'm colossal, but I'm half the size of all of the other gods. So, and he's a trickster, no surprise. Neutral, not chaotic neutral, but so kind of more like his mom, but he's pretty much exclusively worshipped by halflings. You're not going to find any kind of random farmer who thinks he's the bomb. Unless that random farmer also is 3 feet tall. So, and he's a more recent-ish, so he's younger than, I don't think he's not post-war, but he's certainly older than Drendari, but he's still kind of fairly new. And he was there. The halflings, oh my god. I mean, you talk about races that have gone through shit, like the Slytherin and the Manticore and all that, but those are new races. The halflings have been around for a long time, and they have gone through more crap than any of the elder races on Scarn have, or I don't know what you want to call them, the divine humanoid, the original big 5 races. They're in Gelspad particularly, although you find halflings all over the world. Their homeland was what is now the Haggard Hills, which is like a dead land. And their Vangel, good on him, completely annihilated every concept of life in this area. And it's a several hundred miles area. And he just swing of his sword, everything dies. And I'm not just talking people and plants, I'm talking microbial bacteria. Everything died. You cannot grow things here. It is beyond the concept of deadland. It's not arid, so it's not a desert in kind of a sand way, but it's just things should be alive, but there's just nothing there. There's no richness to it. And so this happened, and anyone who was there at the time died, but the halflings that were basically out of town became refugees because they couldn't go back and live there because they couldn't live in that land. So most halflings you find in Gelspad are refugees in some way who've come to another land. Lots of them settled in a country that's now called the heteronymy of Verduk. Not the best name, because there's heavy implications politically there. The Calastian Empire basically went, here, halflings, you can live here. We'll be nice. And they're kind of all, Chardoon lawful evil people.
Right.
But they're like, they give the halflings this land. It's like, you can come live here. And the halflings are like, yay, we can go be farmers there and actually eat and stuff. And so they move there. But then, of course, the Calastians are like, and now you will work for us. And the halflings are like, oh, shit.
There's always a catch.
And some halflings have happily made a home there, but is their own country, but they are still under the overall Calastian hegemony and still under that rule. So their claptrap of a I don't want to say king because that's too much of a nice word, of their ruler, satrap, claptrap, satrap. I think that's what the title is. He's like basically does everything Verduk tells him to do. So, and they're there. And halflings are probably the most enslaved individual race on Scarn. Most of them are, like, so many of them are servants or slaves or prostitutes or criminals. And so there's a bias toward that. There's an assumption that halflings are all scum of the earth because so many of them had to go that route just to survive, and because there's so much the bias, and going back to that racism, Scarn, that bias rolls up and just feeds on itself.
Right.
So the halflings kind of fall into this category, and this is original lore, mind you. And so a lot of it's being a halfling is just overcoming all of these biases and kind of having to deal with, I am underprivileged. I have to deal with all these privileged humans and find my way amongst them. So, talk about societal mapping.
Right.
Halflings people of color who happen to be white? Not necessarily, yeah. Because there is that in Scarn, is that any race can be any color, skin tone. That
Right.
isn't, other than a few choices like the underground elves. For the most part, if you're a human, you can be any skin tone. If you're a Ganges elf, you can be any skin tone. If you're a halfling, you can be any skin tone. But so it's less about that than it is about that kind of race. So
Right.
not about skin tone, about your height or the shape of your ears or the length of your lifespan or whatever. So the halflings get the crap. And
it seems
their
like,
god.
I mean, yeah. So yeah, it is a race thing because they are the race that it gets crapped on. But at the same time, if their homeland hadn't been destroyed, they probably wouldn't be in this situation.
No.
So essentially, it's the creators took this group
It's
of people, and this happened to them, and so yeah, it is definitely an example of racism. But again, not necessarily because they are different. It's because somebody took advantage and oppressed them, and so now they're as a culture, as a society, they are oppressed, and that just spread out.
I know we were going to make the races of Scarn a different episode, but it's just hard not to talk about them when you talk about the demigods. But yeah, and so it's kind of the halflings deal. So Howard.
I'm not going to be able to stop saying Howard now.
Howard, I'm going to call him Howard from now on. God of luck and trickery and halflings, and his symbol's like a little acorn, which I think is a little testament to his mom. So there's there. All right, that's kind of the I'd say the list of well-known demigods in Gelspad. Then we have kind of what I've categorized the rest of them into a couple of different categories because there's just sort of the rest of the gods are kind of random. I've got the demigods of what I call the demigods of nature and other specialized areas. And there aren't even pictures for all of these guys, so I don't know if you have like a generic picture you can put up or whatever. But I'm just going to kind of go down this list a lot faster.
Sure.
So starting with Syhana, and I think there's a picture of her. It's Syhana, neutral good
There she is.
goddess of rainbows. Like seriously, not spring, not weather, not rainbows and color. So Can you get gayer than Sienna? I don't know. She's the daughter of Madriel and an elemental, and she's actually born after the Divine War. I like to think that, and the elemental actually has a name. His Saya, Syal, Syal. And I like to think of him as sort of Madriel's consort. I assume they're still together.
It's like the one love story in Scarlands that has
Scarn,
worked
it's
out.
like happy is Madriel's consort style. And because she's also goddess of weddings, so I can't imagine Madriel not actually being with this guy. And they had a daughter post-war sort of Madriel celebration, and going with the biblical sense of rainbows. Good to have rainbows after the war. And she's basically was born to help heal the land after everything happened that was so horrible. So
she has her work cut out for her.
Yeah, and she and one of her shticks is making magical bridges with rainbows, a la that bridge from Thor in Norse mythology, the Rhine something.
Bifrost.
Bifrost, that's right. Thank you. Like the Bifrost, so she can do that kind of rainbow bridge thing. And that's really all there is to say about her. Well, no, one more thing to say about her. She made her own goddess. So she's been only around for 150 years, and then she goes and makes a goddess. So, to my argument, the newest goddess on Scarn, not counting any PCs have been uplifted, is Aspharal. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that right. Aspharal. Aspharal. She's the goddess of daisies, flowers.
Wow. Yeah.
She
didn't even get art. She was that important.
She didn't get art. Yeah, she's, well, I guess you could have found an art of a sky quill. I should have mentioned that. Sky quill are like these kind of butterfly sprites. So Sehana uplifted her because she apparently needed help with the rainbows.
They're very heavy. They don't look heavy, but they're actually very heavy.
Yeah. So she was made to help with healing Scarn, and she's worshipped by some elves and druids, clerics of Madriel, which is weird because they already have Madriel to worship. So it's like so she's Madriel's not quite granddaughter, but almost It's like Sehana, you couldn't have just gotten a herald. You just made a demigod. Right. Could have just gotten a herald like everybody else.
She jumped the gun.
She was new at it. So Aspharal is Scarn's newest theory god. Not counting anything that various GMs have come up in their plots. So there's those two. We also have Freya. I don't know. She's the Snow Queen.
Gotcha.
Because we needed a Snow Queen, so she's basically Elsa. But she's chaotic neutral, so Elsa on a bad day. And she's worshipped in the north. Son of daughter of. Not even clear who her parents are. She's so not. There's not much going on there. But if you're like, I want a demigod who's not one of the bigs, you can hear. We have Freya. Slightly better known, Imal Wheatsheaf. I don't know if we have art of Imal.
Let's see.
There might be some art of him.
No.
God of farms. He's neutral good, so he's one of the good guys. He's son of Denev and an earth djinn. So Denev gets on with a lot of djinn. She got along with a water djinn, made Manawi, gets along with an earth djinn, makes Imal. Imal is known as Imal Wheatsheaf. So there you go. I believe he's one of the I don't know. He's sort of chill demigod. It's like farmers who like, oh, I don't want to deal with the uppity, Corian Madriel, blah blah blah. They're too big. They're too powerful. They don't really listen to me. I will worship him all and say, "Can you bless my wheat?" And he'll be like, "Bless." Good wheat or good, grain or crops or corn or soybeans. I don't know, but he'd be the one who'd just be like, "Yes, let the crops grow well, and I will let it rain when it's supposed to rain," and all those things. So he's a good god for just your generic farmer who wants like a shrine that doesn't feel ostentatious.
Yeah.
He's the demigod of that. Not very interesting. Then we've got the other kind of goes hand in hand would be Katashama, also neutral good, and she's the goddess of the hearth. I kind of ship these two. Like god of wheat, goddess of the hearth. Come on, tell me they're not a thing. And she's actually worshipped in some of these same areas. And she's the only good god allowed, like freely allowed. No one has an issue in Calastia. So not to say you can't worship Madriel and everything else in Calastia, but it's really frowned upon. There's no temples to Madriel in Calastia. You know, there's maybe a hidden shrine somewhere, but there's no temple. So if you, for those people who want to kind of have that neutral good grooviness, she's accepted. Basically, Chardun is like, that's okay. Or Verdok, I guess. The Calastians are like, this is okay. You can just worship her. She's goddess of hearts. She's like inoffensive. It's like the so I think of her as Hesta, from Greek mythology. She's got very much that vibe. Again, not clear who her parents are, but some kind of. She may have been a Nushada, one of the spirits, who kind of just took on a demigod aspect, and became one just out of enough people started worshiping her for the sake of, like, and I think her worship really came out of, like, we're not allowed to worship Madriel, but we want to hold on to something wholesome.
Right.
So we found this, like, hearth spirit, and as a result, she kind of became a goddess. But I totally imagine her and Imal and Imal getting together because they're just so kind of the same MO. Although she's actually lawful good, not neutral good. So, yeah, but whatever. Okay, so that's kind of the rural gods. Now we're gonna get into the weird gods of strange races.
Right.
And strange things. There's and again, like the description of this Laathsal, Laathsal, which is very much a Sathi kind of word. Uh-oh. Did you cut out entirely?
Nope. I'm still here.
Okay. My thing just is.
Are you frozen? Oh no. Sarah, come back. Let's see. Where did Sarah go? Bum, bum, bum.
Sorry about that.
Oh, are you back?
I am trying to be back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can't see me.
I cannot see you.
Sure, the camera's turned on.
Hooray, technology.
Yeah, our internet is turned on camera.
And actually, while you're getting that all fixed, this is a perfect time to do the giveaway.
Perfect time.
Let me see. I should have brought this book over here. Mama. So, for those of you watching today, you have a chance to win. And this is going to be mirrored because, the camera won't do it. But the Scarred Lands Player's Guide for 5th edition. Because we love the Scarred Lands. And so trying to spread the love around. So if you are in chat watching, go ahead. Actually, let's try this. I have never done a Moobot giveaway before, so let's try it. We're going to announce the giveaway. And you just need to type in hashtag giveaway into chat. And we'll give it a few minutes for everyone to enter, and once that is done, we'll give that away. So I see you are back.
Don't give it to my wife. Okay. So probably...
That's fair. It's always funny when, like, this couple weeks ago, I won a copy of a book that I was one of the writers from, and I'm like, I'm going to give that to someone else because I already have 2 copies of it.
Yeah, no.
So, while people are doing that, please continue.
Yeah, so where was I? The crawling one, the god of snakes. So
Which one is that? What's his name?
Laaths. La.
No word on that one either.
No word on that one. Yeah, it does not surprise me. We should just have an art of like an Asathi.
Yeah.
So he's the only god, to our knowledge, that sided with the Titans.
Gotcha.
And why he's still alive mystifies me. I guess he just kept it on the down low or something. Because why the gods is just no. But he's believed that he was created during the war by Mormo, and basically she uplifted an Asathi, so she didn't make him on Mount Namul, and just been, I need you to have power, and uplifted an Asathi to basically for some of her Asathi followers to have clerics, to have that clerical ability. And he's worshipped by former followers of Mormo, so Asathi and hags and snake people in a general sense, mostly Asathi. And he's would really like to bring Mormo back. So amongst the Mormo worshippers who want to bring Mormo back, there's multiple sects of Mormo worshippers, and many of them don't want to bring her back. They just want power from her stuff.
Right.
He's actually one of the ones who wants to bring her back. So, like, he's a good foil for your D&D campaigns. It's like if you want a group of Asathi / Yuan-Ti, if you want to pull the Yuan-Ti into Scarred lands, they're not necessarily canon, but there's no reason you couldn't use them. He'd be a great god for them to follow and be like, oh, evil weird snake god. Serves that kind of bucket if you want to pull in your other D&D canon lore and be like, I've got a vault of the Yuan-Ti that I want to run, and you just use him. Good opportunity for that. Okay. Moving on, because there's not much else to say about him. He's chaotic evil. That's about probably no surprise. Moving on. Luchanig, god of the Mire Dwellers, and I think we've got a Mire Dweller art. He's another rando. He was a Mire Dweller who got too big for his britches and somehow became a demigod. I don't know if Vangal just went or somebody decided that he could be a demigod. And he's worshipped by Mire Dwellers. There are these weird flying monsters in primarily found in the Morning Marshes. Although you could have them be anywhere mire, you could stick them in the Self-Opera swamps or the swamps of Kentet if you wanted, anywhere where there's swampy land, you could stick him. And he's worshipped by Mire Dwellers, and that's really all there is to say about him. He's chaotic evil, so good monstery bad guy.
Yeah.
If you want to go with traditional, or you want to get weird Scarn, you could be like, we've got some Mire Dwellers who are trying to be good, and you can do that too. Mire Dwellers, to my knowledge, are not a playable race, though. So
I've never seen them as a playable race. No.
I've never seen them there, and they're not really, because they're really only found in swamplands. And
actually, I guess I should say it this way, because 3rd edition was weird. They would, especially Scarred lands, they would be like, okay, so here's the monster entry. If this was a character, this is what you would do, and it would like kind of do a level adjustment. So like a Mire Dweller might have like a +3 to their level adjustment. So if you wanted it to be balanced, super air quotes on that, you would be like, okay, then you technically have 3 class levels in Mire Dweller.
Mire Dweller.
Right. It never really ended up being balanced.
No, not in any. We oh god. I can go off on a tangent with that, but yes. Yeah. Turning monster races into playable races were always like, you'd have some things that were just way super badass, like I have more hit points or whatever, and then you'd have other things that were way super nerfed, and you're like, but I don't even have any of this shit.
What do you mean if I walk in the sunlight, I explode?
Yeah. It was not balanced in any way, unless you were playing a very specific campaign wrapped around it, and then you were probably overpowered. But yeah, so God of Mire Dwellers, that's really all there's to say about him. Chaotic evil, no surprise. Okay, now we're getting to kind of other weird gods that were from Gelspad. Trelu, Trelu, no picture to my knowledge.
Yeah,
of this
I don't
guy.
have him.
God of form and design. Didn't we have that already with that god from Hesherak with the death god? But no, this is another one. I think he and that particular aspect of Norma could totally hang out. So this is the god of artisans, architects, sculptors, and other people who rely on harmony of design and the, Fibonacci golden spectrum
Ratio,
thing
right?
and ratio. Yeah. This is, if you're really big into that, this is the god of that. He's which is crazy because he's the son of Enkili, and you're like, what? And he's chaotic good. So it's like you're the god of unifying of design and like line and symmetry and color, and yet you're chaotic. So I don't know. Architect god. It's like I'm just picturing leaning buildings and like I don't know what's going on with this guy, but that's Trello, and there's not really much more. I guess like he sounds like an app. It's like I don't know. I just mentioned app designers worship Charlie because they want to get their code right. I don't know
Right.
what he is, but anyway, that's him. But son of Enkili, so there you go. I'm thinking Enkili wanted some kind of counterbalance to Hadrada. Like I'm gonna have a kid who's like
Right.
into architecture just to kind of balance Hadrada's severely horrible architecture that's just so ugly, and so I'm gonna have a son who's an architect who just makes beautiful architecture.
Right.
Okay,
We'll go with
moving
that.
on.
That's canon now.
We'll go with that. That's my headcanon for Charlie. Volskalka. I'm literally just going through on this list. The rider. He's the god of horses. Because we need one. But
Yeah.
not the god of the ironbred, not the god of the horse people. He's opposite end of the continent, or at least worships Gelspad. So horse people are in the desert on the west coast. He's worshipped in the plains of Lead on the northeast coast. Not really coast, but northeast area. And the Keldar steppes. He was a horse, I think. No, he's the rider, so he's not a horse. He's the rider. Who was uplifted by Tannel. Tannel actually was like, I'm gonna make you a god because you're cool, and she turns him into a demigod. So very, very small following this guy. I don't even know who follows him, but apparently that's where he's appreciated, is on the steppes of Lead, which is different than the plains of Lead. Keldar steppes.
It's the one. Okay. It's the steps, right at the edge.
Oh, right at the edge of the.
That's how you get up to it.
Yeah. And then finally in Gelspad, there's one more kind of group of demigods, and I'm using demigods in like the really loosest term. Things that are worshipped on Scarn, but that grant power in some way. And I believe these are just Ushada, i.e. animal spirits that kind of got not necessarily uplifted, but kind of fall into that overall category of people worship them. And they're basically animal totems, primarily worshipped by various barbarian races in the northern parts of Scarn or in the Borderlands or some of the Badlands, who are like, we're not druids, we're just like nature people. And I think they kind of fit that overall like beast lord category that you see in a lot of pantheons. So and it's just you want an animal totem that represented by some kind of demigod-like figure. This is your category. Specifically, I call out cat, dog, wolf, eagle, and bear. But I don't think I'm sure a GM could be like, somebody wants to be a crow. Okay, you can throw that in there too. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like there's any punishment to like get creative as a GM around this group. But and cat, is that a bobcat or a lion or
all inclusive?
All inclusive, yeah. So dog is dog and wolf are separate. Why did we do that? But and you make that of what you will. But that kind of fits that last category of, and I think that falls under the Ushada spirit worshippers. So if you're in that kind of realm of given that the Titans were spirits to begin with, it maps that other spirits are worshipped by various naturalists, we'll call it. and much more so, more likely amongst the barbarian tribes. So it's the gods of Gelspad. There's also a bunch of gods in Asherak. I don't know if we want to get into them today. They're not necessarily super interesting beyond that. They're really only worshipped in Asherak.
Yeah.
Um,
We can ignore them for now.
Well,
Maybe it'll be
there's
an update.
There's only one that I call out because I find him plot-wise very interesting. And that's the god of fate and destiny. Only worshipped in Asherak. Ashimas. Neutral, true neutral. And he arguably fills that missing neutral bucket that Arcanthus left behind in Asherak. So that's why I find him interesting.
Yeah.
And he's the child of Mesos. Only Mesos.
Huh.
Like kind of in an Athenian birth, where Mesos thought him up and gave birth to him. And so I think he's interesting because Mesos was a Titan with plans.
Yeah.
And if any Titan was going to foresee the divine war and prepare for it, it was Mesos. And which is probably why the gods took him out first. And Ashimas sided on the side of the gods for the war. He didn't side with his father, but and he understood the Titans better than any other god, and he was kind of essential in a lot of that. And he was also really essential in creating the Seraphic engine. He was like behind a lot of that. So I find that kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And as a god of fate, there's so much to be done with that. So I've kind of played around with him. The rest of the gods of Asherak is kind of random and weird. It's very similar to some of the other gods. And there's a whole bunch of desert gods.
Yeah.
There's like 4 desert gods: wind, oases, camels. And then finally we've got my last category of gods, which is dead gods. Talked about Hadaris quite a bit. I've talked about Arcanthus quite a bit. I've talked about Gendavius, depending on where you are in meta, may be alive again. There's a couple other dead gods. I think did I talk about Miridim? I think I talked about Miridim. She triggered the war, daughter of Hydrata. And so I did talk about most of them, but I have one left I didn't talk about, and this one annoys me. I almost intentionally forget this guy. Arathel. And he's so buried in text. Like he doesn't have an entry anywhere.
Interesting.
Like he's not in Divine and Defeated. You're not going to find him in the Asherak book. He's in a very obscure entry, and like a description of a location. I think in like one of the cities. I want to say it's Ankyla, one of the places in Calastia. I'm not 100% on that one. I have to look that one up to confirm. But he's touched on in a text, and this is what annoys me because it's like, is he even canon? Because you didn't expand on this guy at all.
Right.
And was this one author just sort of threw this in sort of just to create some backstory lore for a location because it felt like it needed something?
Right.
Because he's the god of the nameless orb.
Oh, weird.
And he's described as the brother of Madriel and Belsameth. They already have 2 other brothers, Nathalos and Gendavius. So it's like, did Mormo and Mesos have another kid? Like full brother? Because there's plenty of gods of like half brother, Vangelin and Keely are half siblings. So, in what capacity? And that's all it really says is he was the god of the second moon of Scarn and Belsameth's brother. Belsameth being the goddess of the other moon, the primary moon of Scarn. He assumed to have been died in the war or something. He's barely remembered, and none of his followers survived. So, WTF?
Yeah.
And that's all we got. And I'm just like, what's going on? Who's this guy? And he obviously totally, his existence screws my whole theory about the nameless orb. So that's why I have issues with him just being a thing. And because this is like kind of goes against that non-canon concept that I have. But I could fold him in as sort of a god who tried to be a god of the Nameless Orb and who failed at it or got influenced by it, or because the Nameless Orb is just this rock in space, with it after the Titans nommed on it, took its powers away. There's
Right.
nothing there. It's just this lifeless meteor thing or planetoid that, potentially could you inject consciousness back into it? That would probably be a bad idea, though, given that it tried to destroy Scarn once, so probably not a good thought. So the idea that there was a god of it, and who even worships the Nameless Orb? There's some rat people. There's some Slytherin, the diseased tribe, worship the Nameless Orb, and that's about it. No one else really worships it. And they call it relief from sorrows. Is that not a creepy name?
Right.
So the idea that there's a god of it associated with Belsmith in some way, it's all kind of fuzzy. Or could he be a retelling of the mythology of what happened to the Nameless Orb?
Right. That was my next comment. I'm just like, I wonder if this is the name they've given to that.
To the orb itself.
Yeah.
And history is just stating he's a brother of Belsmith because Belsmith's the goddess of the moon, and therefore the other moon, if it's Belsmith's moon, that would be, if the moon was called Arathel, could that actually be the name given to that entity that is the moon? Is it Arathel? And
I feel like that's
some good evil hand thing.
Yeah, that's some good campaign fodder right there.
So if you ever want to wake that guy up and you need to give it a name, here's a convenient one.
Right. Buried in text.
Buried in text, very, very buried in text, since he's a dead god. Is he the moon itself? And I think that's interesting. So, and his alignment also not clear. What's going on with this guy.
Yeah.
So that's beyond the dozen random gods of Asherak.
Right. Well,
there's nine gods of Asherak. Okay, so yeah, that's the bulk of them. Yeah, and if you want to know more about the gods of Asherak, pick up Lost.
Strangelands.
Strangelands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lost Tribes, or Lost Continents, and the rest of them are all in. Defined and Defeated, there's also a lot of information on them in Edge of Infinity. Nice. Obviously, there's summaries in the various player guides, and the Guide to Gelspad has summaries of them. And there's hints and pieces all over the landscape about these guys. So.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a Planes episode coming here soon, because it isn't exactly like, Forgotten Realms Planes and all that, and that's some interesting stuff, and we can get into that.
Yeah. I find the planes are fun to play with, I gotta say. I do think they're.
And there's definitely some rules out there that, not that we're encountering this on Monday's game, but there's definitely some plane jumping rules out there that are not really typical for other settings. So I think it's a good bit of lore. We can definitely talk about that in the future.
Yeah, my players hate me when I start messing around with planes. And they have visited like a lot of them because I ran, up through level 20 and 35, and they bounced between a lot of different planes. So and it's crazy how that works. So that's the Demigods. And
so until next time, Sarah, tell us all about yourself.
I am Sarah Stewart, author of Vigilant, through Shadows and Dreams Book 1. Shadows and Dreams, anything to do with Arias and Dundari, you think? Possibly in Lyrics when we get there. Because I've loved those plot lines around all of the crazy. Also a creator for a bunch of stuff on Sarcine Vault, Maritime Vigil Training Mission, Maritime Patrol, and the Scarred Lands Calendar. Working on some more titles that may be coming out I don't know when because it takes a while to get this stuff out the door, but working on some stuff there.
Nice.
And married to Francis Stewart, who's also my co-author, Vigilant, and other Scarlet stuff. We work in pairs, but I am the lore master when it comes to this stuff, and have been for a long time.
And
And
people can catch you and Fran and me
and
on Mondays
Mondays.
at is it 3 p.m.
Eastern.
I think it's 3 p.m. at Eastern, yeah. On Plastic
no.
Age Plays here on Twitch,
Noon, yeah,
where we're
noon
doing
Pacific.
an actual play, Scarlands campaign, which has been a hoot to be a part of. So
Yeah. For the
yay.
first time, I'm playing a paladin, and I never freaking play paladins.
And it's such a great group to be a paladin in too.
It is a great. My only problem with it. I mean, I said the only problem. It's a lot of doing this online is challenging, but is the lore balance, because my vision of Scarred Lands
Right.
and Travis, who's the freaking line lead, his vision is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
And we overlap significantly. We overlap a lot, but I've obviously got my wacky-do headcanons, and he's got his own interpretations. And while we both do our damnedest to keep to the lore as much as possible, there's lots of problems in the lore. Because
Yeah.
the lore is very sticky, and Nemorga is just one example of that.
Right.
Yeah, it's challenging for me to just rein it in and not go, but.
It's true.
but no, just shut up. Tendari would never do that. Tendari might do that in his game. Shut up.
Do it now. So I guess I should introduce myself. So I am Jeremy Hochhalter. You can find me on Twitter at WHPubs or on Facebook at WHPublications. You can also just go to my website, WHPublications.com. We are usually here on Fridays for The Lore You Know, and then this afternoon we'll see how my internet connection is holding up, and we may be here for the Curiosity Cache, an actual play that takes place, well, it was taking place in Shelzar, but they have left the city currently. That is a fun romp for level 0 characters that are finding their way as adventurers, so we'll see how that goes. Although some of them have leveled up, although we didn't really make a big announcement about that. That has been interesting. But I need to go prep for that show.
All right.
So until next time, actually, let me see. I'm going to hit this giveaway button, but I don't think anyone actually entered. Oh, no valid entries. There are a couple of people that are watching. I'm going to roll randomly. Odd is going to be Commander Root, and Even is going to be Stripfang. Even Stripfang, I'm going to drop you a message to see about getting you this hardcover copy. If you don't want it, then I will get Commander Root a chance. But until next time, everybody stay safe, be healthy, enjoy gaming, and we will see you in future episodes of The Lore You Know. Bye.